Let's dive right into this explainer. I'm your host, but today I'm also stepping in as your animated explorer. And honestly, I'm just casually tossing this standard classroom globe right out the window, because pretty much everything you thought you knew about our Earth is about to be completely challenged. We're going to break down some seriously mind-bending geographical realities that will literally have you questioning your place on this planet.
So let's start with something you probably learned way back in elementary school. Think you know the tallest mountain in the world? As I point my trusty teaching stick right at this gorgeous picture of Mount Everest, you're probably shouting, "Everest, right at me!" It's common knowledge, right? Well, geography has a really funny way of throwing us a curveball. Zone 1. Shattering Mountain Myths.
Okay, so Mount Everest is the highest mountain above sea level. But to find the absolute tallest mountain from base to peak, I actually have to trade my climbing gear for scuba gear and swim way down to the base of the Pacific Ocean. Down here lies Hawaii's Mauna Kea. It sits at about 13,769 feet above sea level, but its base is deeply submerged. When you measure it from the ocean floor all the way to the very top, it's a staggering 32,800 feet tall. That makes it a full 3,000 feet taller than the mighty Everest. Crazy, right?
But wait, it actually gets weirder. Everest isn't even the closest point on Earth to the moon. So I've put on my bulky spacesuit to reach for the lunar surface because, well, Earth is not a perfect sphere. It's actually more of an oval that bulges out in the middle right around the equator. Because of this equatorial bulge, Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador gets pushed outward. Even though its total elevation is lower than Everest, that bulge makes Mount Chimborazo roughly 1.5 miles closer to the moon than Everest is. No way, right?
Let's stay in the mountains for a sec, but talk about sheer drops. 105 degrees. Notice how incredibly dizzy I look peering over the edge of this cliff face at Mount Thor in the Canadian territory of Nunavut. Now, Mount Thor isn't the tallest mountain, but it does have the world's longest purely vertical drop. It features a terrifying 105-degree overhang. If you were to drop something off this edge, it would fall for a dizzying 4,101 feet. That's literally more than 3/4 of a mile before it ever hit the ground.
Zone 2. Wild Water Wonders.
We constantly hear that our planet is covered by 71% water. And, that sounds incredibly abundant. But I'm desperately holding up this microscopic glass for a really good reason. That tiny little glass represents reality. Only 2.5% of all that water is fresh water, and most of that is actually locked up in glaciers and snowfields. When you really do the math, humans can actually only consume about 0.007% of the water on this entire planet. It's wild to think about.
Speaking of oceans, have you ever heard of a sea completely without a coast? I'm currently getting hopelessly tangled up in this thick, brown seaweed because we've just entered the Sargasso Sea, located in the North Atlantic. It is the absolute only sea on Earth that doesn't have a single coastline. Instead of being bordered by land, it is entirely contained by 4 massive ocean currents. It actually gets its name from the dense, free-floating sargassum seaweed that basically traps everything that floats into it.
Let's leave the ocean and head over to the river. 90 days? Why 90? Well, because as I float lazily on this single giant drop of water down the Mississippi River, we are traversing an immense 2,348 miles. The river is so incredibly long and winds through so much of the continent that it takes a single drop of water a full 90 days. Yep, 3 entire months just to travel from its source in Minnesota all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Our next geographical reality is honestly quite tragic. Here at Israel's Dead Sea, I'm nervously tiptoeing around these massive, terrifying sinkholes. The sea isn't just receding because of a drought. Its actual surface area is shrinking. Over the past 15 years, the shifting water dynamics have caused more than 1,000 sinkholes to form, literally eating away at the land and severely threatening the surrounding aquifers, local businesses, and hotels.
Zone 3. Bizarre Borders and Boundaries.
Okay, prepare yourself for some serious geographic inception located over in the Philippines. I'm literally having to physically climb up layer by layer, totally panting from the effort here, just to explain this one. We start on Luzon Island. On that island is Lake Taal. Inside Lake Taal is Volcano Island. Inside Volcano Island is Main Crater Lake. And finally, inside Main Crater Lake is Vulcan Point. That means Vulcan Point is an island inside a lake on an island inside a lake on an island. Phew. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Now let's take a look at the map of the United States. If I asked you what the westernmost state is, you'd probably easily say Alaska. But what if I asked for the easternmost part of the U.S.? Believe it or not, the answer is also Alaska. I'm stretching my animated arms as wide as they can possibly go to touch both sides of the globe, because Alaska's Aleutian Islands stretch so incredibly far to the west that they actually cross the 180th meridian, spilling right over into the eastern hemisphere. This technically makes Simisopochnoi Island in Alaska the easternmost point in all of North America.
Now, what about countries entirely inside of other countries? Italy has a very unique geographical distinction. It completely landlocks two independent micronations. One is San Marino, and the other is Vatican City, the headquarters of the Roman Catholic Church. Watch me as I casually walk across the entire country of Vatican City in a single afternoon, because it really is the smallest country in the world, taking up just 0.19 square miles. To put that into perspective, that's only about 1/8 the size of Central Park in New York City.
On the completely other end of the border extreme, we have Russia and China. I am totally exhausted just trying to stamp my passport 28 times here. Despite the fact that China could fit completely comfortably inside Russia's massive landmass, both nations are totally tied for having the most international borders. They each physically touch 14 different countries. Zone 4. Time Zones and Shifting Earth.
Situated right between the US and Russia are the Diomede Islands. Big Diomede belongs to Russia, and Little Diomede belongs to the US. Geographically, they're only 2.4 miles apart. I mean, you could practically swim it. But as I jump back and forth between today and tomorrow, you'll realize the international dateline runs right smack between them, meaning there is a massive 20-hour time difference between these two tiny islands. That's exactly why they're nicknamed Tomorrow Island and Yesterday Island.
Speaking of time, 11. That is how many time zones Russia has. 11 out of the 24 time zones in the entire world. To emphasize this mind-boggling width, I'm eating my morning cereal on the left side of the country, while my clone is sitting down for a steak dinner on the far right side of the country, happening at the exact same moment. Now let's talk about the actual Earth shifting right beneath our feet. 32 feet. I'm slowly sinking waist deep here, because this actually represents a very real crisis for Mexico City. The city was originally built by the Aztecs on an artificial island in a lake bed. Fast forward to today, and because locals constantly extract water from the ancient aquifers beneath the city, the ground is literally giving way. Mexico City has sunk a terrifying 32 feet over the last 60 years alone.
So the absolute crucial point to understand about geography is that it is never static. The continents are always moving. But just how fast? Well, I'm staring in absolute disbelief at my unusually long, uncut fingernails for a reason here. The speed of continental drift, the tectonic plates shifting across the globe, averages about 0.7 inches per year. Coincidentally, that is the exact same speed at which human fingernails grow. It perfectly illustrates the immense, slow march of geological time.
And here is exactly where that fingernail speed shifting actually leads us. Along the famous San Andreas Fault, the land is slowly pushing Southern California northward at a rate of about 2 inches a year. I've pulled up a lawn chair to wait as the clock ticks past millions of years here. Because of this constant shift, in an estimated 10.6 million years, Los Angeles will have moved so far north that it will literally be neighbors with San Francisco. Which finally brings us to the end of our geographical journey. I'm packing up my animated suitcase and waving a fond goodbye to a rapidly spinning, constantly changing globe. From islands within islands to massive cities sinking into ancient lake beds, our planet is far more complex and bizarre than a simple flat map could ever convey. So I'll leave you with this final thought. After seeing all of this, where exactly do you think you're standing right now? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep exploring!